Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are, it's breakfast somewhere. So eat up. Welcome to Breakfast with Vinny. Food for thought. Welcome back to the show. So today we're going to talk about a word that oftentimes it gets reduced to a simple yes or no on a medical form. Sobriety. But sobriety isn't just the absence of a substance in your bloodstream, it's a state. Imagine you're driving a car at night in a heavy fog. You could see the taillights in front of you, but everything else is blurry. And you feel like you're in control, but your world is only 10 feet wide. That fog is what happens when we're not sober-minded. So we think we're seeing the road, but we're really just guessing. And you might be thinking, oh, well, I can control my substances. I've got everything under control, no problem. Or I don't have an addictive personality. Well, hey, if that's you and this has been the case for your entire life, bravo. Tally-ho, carpe diem. But many of us don't realize that there's a progression that can and often does occur, not to mention that so many of us live in a state of self-deception. We tell ourselves, oh, I'm okay, I'm perfectly functional, all the while we're using these micro doses of escape, whether it's alcohol, substances, or even digital addictions to numb reality. We convince ourselves that we're sober because we didn't lose our jobs or we didn't crash the car. But are we clear? True sobriety means thinking clearly. It's when the fog lifts and you realize you weren't just driving badly, you were driving with your eyes half shut. And mentally, sobriety, it's like upgrading your brain's operating system. When we're not sober, our logic's compromised. So we then go into this cycle of justification. Have you ever noticed how when you're under the influence, or even if you're just distracted, deeply distracted, you might act out? Maybe you got snappy with someone or you just neglect a responsibility. In that moment, your non-sober mind creates this narrative to protect itself. You might say, well, I only yelled because they were being annoying, or I deserve this drink because work was really tough. So we build this fortress of excuses, but spiritually, it just creates a massive wall between us and our real selves. Spiritually, one thing sobriety is about is presence. It's the courage to sit in a room with yourself without any buffers and not run away. But you're not really alone, as we'll see in a moment. When you're sober-minded, you're not a passenger in your own life anymore. You start to feel the weight of your choices. And you can't heal what you can't feel. So I've talked about the fog, but let's get into the mechanics of how we actually stay clear. There's a famous saying, especially in recovery circles, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. Think about that for a second. If your internal compass is broken, you can't use that same compass to find north. If your thinking led you into the fog of self-deception and justification, your best thinking isn't going to get you out. And this is where spirituality comes in. It becomes the ultimate practical tool. And when we talk about spirituality here, we're talking about that ego-shattering realization that there's something greater than yourself. You have to hook your anchor into something outside of your own head because that's where all the excuses live. And when you believe in something greater than yourself, you admit that you don't have all the answers. You trade in your ego-driven mind for a sober mind, and you stop trying to white-knuckle your way through life and instead start asking for guidance. This humility is the foundation of clarity. As soon as I said, God, I need your help. I can't do this alone. Everything changed in an instant. So, okay, now let's look outward. How does your individual clarity change the world? Well, when one person chooses to become sober-minded, they become a reliable point in other people's lives. Think about sobriety like a giant web. If one thread is frayed or unstable, the whole structure weakens. Not being sober causes negative behaviors, unreliability, irritability, a lack of empathy, and they all ripple out. When we justify our foggy behavior, we erode the trust of our families and our communities. Conversely, a sober society is a conscious society. Imagine a world where people don't react out of a numbed impulse, but respond with a clear mind. When you're sober, you're more patient, you're more observant, You notice the person struggling next to you because you're not preoccupied with your own fog. Individually, you gain your time back. Socially, we gain a citizen who's actually present for the work of living. So we talked about the internal work, but eventually you have to leave your house. You're going to walk into a wedding, a holiday party, or a happy hour where fog is being sold by the glass. And in these moments, social pressure can feel like a physical weight. But remember, the same mind that created the problem can't solve it. If you go into a party relying only on your own willpower, you're using a broken tool. You need a strategy rooted in your higher connection. So here's some ways you can handle that pressure while you stay sober-minded. You can use the invisible shield. One of the simplest tricks is to always have a non-alcoholic drink in your hand. If your hand's full, people stop offering. It's a physical boundary, keeps you from having to say no 20 times a night. Or you got the elevator pitch. Don't feel like you owe anyone a life story. Practice a simple, firm response like, I'm not drinking tonight, but thanks. If they push, remember that their discomfort with your sobriety usually says more about their relationship with substances than yours. And then you have the exit strategy. Before you even walk in, know how you're going to get out. If the vibe shifts or you feel that old justification voice starting to whisper, give yourself permission to leave. Your sobriety is worth more than being polite to a party that doesn't serve you anymore. And last but not least, you have the spiritual anchor. If you feel overwhelmed in the middle of a crowd, step outside or duck into a quiet corner. Pray silently. Take a few deep breaths and just tell yourself, hey, I'm here. I'm clear. And I'm not doing this alone. Hook back into that power greater than yourself. God does hear you, and God knows and hears our sincere intentions. So how do we maintain this daily? How do we keep the spiritual connection alive so that the old mind doesn't take the wheel again? Here's a few practical shifts. Morning surrender. Before you check your phone or start your to-do list, take a couple of minutes, acknowledge you're not the center of the universe. Even say it out loud. Hey, I'm not in total control, and that's okay. Communicate with your higher power. It breaks the cycle of anxiety and the need to fix everything with a substance or a distraction. It's a spiritual handoff, and it keeps your mind light. And a radical inventory, or the mirror test. Since we already know the mind loves to deceive us, we have to have an external check. Find a sober-minded peer, someone further along the path. When you start feeling that old irritability or just the urge to justify a bad mood, tell them. Bringing a thought into the light kills its power to deceive you. If you keep it in your head, it's a secret. If you say it out loud, it's a strategy. And you have intentional silence. We live in a world, it hates quiet, but the sober mind thrives in it. Practice 5 minutes of sitting still every day. No music, no podcasts, just you and God. This is where you learn to tell the difference between the loud voice of your ego cravings and the quiet voice of your spirit. When you lean on a power greater than yourself, you're not just not drinking or not using. You're living intentionally. You're building a life that you don't feel the need to escape from. And remember, sobriety is a team sport between you and the divine. Your mind may have started the fire, but the spirit puts it out. Thanks for walking this path with me today. To wrap it up, I'm going to leave you with this. Sobriety is not a punishment for past mistakes. It's a reward for your future self. It's the radical act of choosing to see the world exactly as it is, without filters or shortcuts. It means having this sober mind to know that even when life's hard, you have the mental and spiritual tools to handle it without needing to disappear. So you can stop the justification, stop that I'm fine narrative, open your eyes, clear the fog, and see how much more beautiful the road looks when you can actually see where you're going. Thanks for listening. Stay clear, stay present, and stay connected. I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode of Breakfast with Vinny.